Hello and welcome to our final working group presentation on fostering international relations, which has been supported by our sponsor, the UK Space Agency. Today we have presenters Linda, Maria, Alessandra and Nadia that'll be showing what work we've done over the last week. So without further ado, I will hand over to Linda, who will kick us off.
Thank you so much, Zoe. Welcome everyone, and we'll be presenting on some of the findings and recommendations we have on fostering international relations in the space sector. I am Linda, and I'm an aeronautical engineer from South Africa, currently residing in Johannesburg. Please move on to the next slide. So just to give an outline of what we'll be speaking about, the importance of international cooperation in the space sector, and some of the subsectors to this, and also the recommendations that we are putting forth to the UN, the UK Space Agency, the Space Generation Advisory Council. And then right at the end, we'll allow some time for questions and answers. Please move on to the next slide. Thank you. So what is the importance? What are some of the benefits and risks that come with increasing international cooperation in the space sector? So the main concept we discuss is that international cooperation is essential to enable growth of the space industry, as it allows to broaden our horizons on what can be achieved. It lowers the cost of space activities and increases accessibility to space. The reason for a country to want to collaborate with other countries is purely out of the country's self-interest in the activity and use of space. These ranging from political, economic, scientific, developmental, or for national security. The order and priority for these depends on the country's context, what socioeconomic challenges are most pressing, and what they aim to achieve with their space programs. We also need to acknowledge that different countries have different skills and tools, and thus by collaborating and interacting, the tools of one nation can be used to address the questions of another. The basis for collaboration also entails understanding the skills, knowledge, and infrastructure the country you wish to establish a relationship with possesses. International collaborations help to prevent reduplication of efforts and maximize the use of funding and equipment so that questions and problems can be addressed more rapidly and more in depth. The main benefits and considerations that we spoke about are listed below, but I'll start with discussing the developmental aspect of it. The aim of having space-based services and technologies is to improve the overall welfare of humankind, and cooperating internationally allows you to do this in a more effective way. Space applicability and the pursuit of space is determined based on the country's context in order to reap the full benefits of its applications. To do this, there needs to be knowledge of how science and innovation together have a role that can be used to promote sustainable development. This means linking scientific knowledge to the innovation policy to have more investments into the space sector. And now addressing the humanitarian aspect, where developed nations assist developing nations in the development of humanitarian endeavors in order to save lives, reduce suffering, and ensure that human dignity is protected even in times of crisis. The risk that comes with this, however, is the possibility of neo-colonialism as an underlying condition for this agreement, where you find that the developing nations are exploited for their resources in order to receive aid, or can happen in more in an indirect way that where countries who are receiving the aid are reluctant to vote against countries that are providing this aid in situations such as trade sanctions. So we need to ensure that there are clear and transparent intentions for this type of coalition. Secondly comes the scientific or technological aspects, which entail having access to foreign countries' infrastructure, and the sharing of scarce resources, expanding research opportunities for academia, the sharing or transfer of skills and knowledge, the sharing of data and information. The risk that comes with this is the obvious data management, or how to ensure privacy or security of the citizens of that nation. The third part is the political aspect, which is probably the most frequently cited benefit of space cooperation. because of the diplomatic cachet and the control that it can provide. Space partnership is viewed as a valuable soft power tool. Participation in multilateral space projects increases the diplomatic influence of participating countries upon each other. In addition to that, it increases the country's prestige by making visible its technical and scientific accomplishments. It also allows political access to countries where its relations are weak. On the contrary, and what happens in reality is that the political aspect has been utilized as a filter on which countries can actually collaborate with each other. This is usually due to historical conflicts or just not wishing to be associated with a certain nation due to its reputation. Lastly, I'll speak on the economic benefits, which include the sharing of expensive costs. In a time where funds are limited, understanding the high costs that come with space exploration is international collaboration is important in that you're able to share the costs that are associated with it. Additionally, it enables economic development both in the developed and developed nations, the growth of global markets for space related goods and services. The risk that comes with this is that some countries contribute more financially in projects than others. And the considerations that come with this is that there needs to be frameworks that ensure that the benefit or the growth of the economy is not only seen on the national level, but also trickles down to the industry, which involves the private sector and research institutions. Meaning that the agencies can either act as enablers of the industries, or there need to be frameworks that determine who facilitates the growth or the interaction of these international collaborations. Or there could be a balance between the national entities and the private sector who facilitates this interaction. I'll now be passing on to Alessandra, who will be speaking about ensuring peaceful space exploration.
Sorry, Alessandra, you're just on mute there. Alessandra, you're on mute.
Yes, can you hear? Can you see the presentation again? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry. So my name is Alessandra. I'm Italian. I'm based in Paris, and I am here with the head of SJC, where I am project group coordinator. So we talk about the importance of international cooperation in space, but how to ensure a peaceful space exploration. This is really important, especially today, because today the space sector is changing. So the landscape is practically changing because there are new actors joining the sector. And it is important to ensure a peaceful space exploration, but at the same time also a cooperation in space is to clearly define who are the new actors coming from the commercial actors, so small and medium enterprises or startups coming from the new space era, let's say, or NGOs or other non-governmental actors or non-traditional space actors. We need to define who they are, and we need to ensure an inclusive dialogue with them. At the same time, the interactions and actually also the participation of these new actors in space requires also a change of perspective on all the existing corpus legis, or the list the document, I mean, all the conventions and treaties and all the agreements that have been signed by nations. And this is important to update this corpus legi, because it's important to try and bounder and at the same time provide a certain accountability to these new actors in relations with their activities. And in particular, we're talking about space exploration, and we can make a reference to Moon or Mars. And this is important to identify these legal activities. When illegal activities happen in space, we need to also set up mechanisms to kind of respond to this kind of activities, to limit their effects, and also to not affect also the multilateral relations, including the countries. In this sense, again, it is important to have an inclusive dialogue with these different actors. But how? Firstly, set up a common language. This is important. Set up a common language is also set up a shared vision and also shared definition of what space is, what is space exploration, how it can be defined by also the commercial actors, which have different purposes and different mission compared, for instance, to national space agencies or other governmental actors. Now I give the floor to Nadia, and she can tell you more.
Thank you. Just the next slide. Great. Okay, so considerations of the type of technology that we'd want to share with other nations. So we do think as a group that advanced space nations should really be sharing their technology services with other emerging space nations and just other space nations, just to really build on what is already there. It's important, though, to remember that we should trust the local governments of the countries as well, within our own country. And it's also important that that collaboration takes place where common goals are aligning. And in terms of nations providing that technology for mitigating climate change, preventing natural disasters, and helping to make agriculture more efficient, it's very important to do that. It's also important that with the natural disasters especially, I just want to emphasize that space agencies should be helping other nations with those, particularly emerging space nations and nations which don't have a space agency, because space agencies shouldn't be for profit first. That's kind of a commercial sector role, and in particular there should be kind of cap on how much profit these industries can take for these specific instances, for natural disaster prevention and things like that. It's also important, however, that when we invest in sharing technology and we invest in building our own technology, that we make sure that it benefits our nation as well, and it brings some profit in as well, so that it's more sustainable, it can be used more, and it just helps everyone in the end. In terms of instances where it wouldn't be appropriate to share these technologies, it would really come down to security, surveillance systems in a way, because sometimes you want to use the security to hide these technologies. And in terms of surveillance of criminal activity, wildlife, and trafficking, it's important that we stay on top of those things, but perhaps the surveillance of wildlife, if that was shared, potential poachers could come in and it would not be very good. And also it's important to think of collaborations with nations that don't align politically in a security way that could cause a bit of an issue. But obviously with space collaborations, you kind of would want to collaborate with a nation that you may be a little bit on edge about. It might help the political alliances as well. But it's important to remember that in an instance where you don't really align politically with a nation, it's not particularly appropriate to share security-based technology kind of thing. So if you would like to move on to the next slide, please. Oh, that's great. Thank you. So our recommendations for United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs really comes down to what they stand for as well. And they really want to establish legal and regulatory frameworks to govern space activities and strengthen the capacity of emerging space nations, especially nations which don't have a space agency, to use the space technology which is coming out and use that for the development of their own nations and other technological advances. So really, we think that the role of the organization should be a regulatory body. It should act as a think tank, and it should really assist in choosing the essential work, because it has such a broad range of different nations. It can be very difficult, however, to choose and prioritize which essential work matters. So I think that each nation will have its own priority as well. So certain nations might be prioritizing infrastructure, whereas other nations might be prioritizing agricultural advances. It varies, and then I guess a kind of matching system would be quite good to have. It would also be really great because of that matching system, again, to stimulate that collaboration. There also aren't very many consequences at the moment for nations which maybe cross the boundaries of what's okay in the space sector, and if there's any emergencies in space itself and things like that. So it would be really good for this organization, United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, to kind of develop their treaties a bit, to look over them and just improve them a little bit for that, so that they're a bit more suitable for the circumstances. And we think that in order for UNISA to retain its relevance, especially with the number of startups and the commercial sector booming at the moment, it's really great to, again, set those guidelines as a regulatory body so that everyone kind of knows the standard and the guidelines to adhere to. Obviously, each government will have its own set of standards and guidelines, but creating that basic level, it would be really great to just bring everyone up to international standard and also create an international understanding. For example, the issue with space debris, that's becoming an increasing problem, and also we're becoming more aware of the issues that come with it. And it's organizations like these, which are global, which really bring that forward to people's attention, so it really can stay relevant with these smaller startups because it's so collaborative. It's also important, however, that different governments might pay in a little bit more. So by setting those guidelines, it kind of makes everyone a little bit equal and things like that. So it's important as well with the private sector. Obviously, they're going more for profit, and whereas government bodies will be going also for profit, but more so they might have a more support. They might give more support to other nations. So there's a balance to be struck there, and that would honestly be up to the government themselves, establishing what their priorities are and how in line those would be with their local commercial sector and things like that. So all in all, we think that UNISA is a great body for regulating space around the globe, and there are some improvements, such as fixing the treaties a bit more so they're a bit more up to speed with the booming commercial sector, and providing support to nations that really need some help as well, and improving the space sector as a whole. So I'll pass you on to Maria to talk about the recommendations we have for the UK Space Agency. Well, I should introduce myself. I am Nadia, and I am an astrophysics student. I'm based in Glasgow in Scotland. So if you are ever in Scotland, anyone watching, you know who I am. But anyway, I'll pass you on to Maria to talk about recommendations for the UK Space Agency.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Maria. I'm Lebanese from Lebanon, but I live currently in Paris. And I'm going to present the last part of our presentation today. It's going to concern the recommendations for the UK Space Agency as well as for SGAC. We have three main questions for the UK Space Agency. We start with the role that the UKSA should play in international development. Most importantly, we stress on the role of the leader, since the UKSA can be a big participant in the guidelines for national as well as for private agencies. Also, focusing exclusively on developing projects aimed at reaching UN SDGs, very well developed by Nadia previously. Encouraging cooperation over competition in a way to make more projects possible, increase public outreach activities to stimulate interest in the field and motivate especially the young generation. Second of all, we will consider the high potential impact areas for the use of space technology in development. We start with the Earth observation, which can be used in many ways, especially with the issues that we tackle lately and we stress on as for deforestation, agriculture, fishing, air pollution, natural disaster. So space technology can help a lot to understand these things and to know how to do and what to do at the right moment to control it. Also, we should consider the education to support current and future infrastructure. The third point is about challenges that we tend to forget sometimes, but that are really important to consider. We start with the privacy of data, like who to share with and who not to share with the data, the privacy. Demonstrating space technology uses in everyday life. Also, the surveillance of illegal activities, so it can help with the defense and national securities, etc. And finally, the highly specialized education. We go to the next slide to continue our ideas. How can also the UK Space Agency be more valued and also interfere by also sharing vital technologies which can be used in other fields such as clean energy, solar panels, more durable infrastructures, and this can lead also to the main idea of sustainability as we developed previously. Also by providing essential disaster tools management, using space collaborations and big projects as a political tool for de-escalation. And we have here the factor of geopolitics, the different needs, the power, etc. And lastly, we consider the funds, which is a very big point and important point that can make things possible or impossible, and it's a balance between the humanitarian side versus the economic aspect. So every project has many factors, and yeah. In the end, the last idea concerning the UK Space Agency, we should stress on the idea that despite Brexit, the UKSA should keep a strong position in the ESA to reinforce the importance of international alignment and collaboration in the space sector, ensuring strong space alignment in Europe, in addition to international collaboration with Australia, Chile, India, etc. We move on to the next slide, where we will consider the recommendations for the SGAC. First of all, about fostering innovation and supporting the creation of links between different worldwide organizations, from the academia world to the commercial organizations. They should put like a timeline and try to meet the goals through the collaboration and partnerships, and be strict with the timeline and make all projects happen. And lastly, promote dissemination of space information on two levels across the globe via the local point of action, public activities, long-term profitability projects, etc. And we also always come back to the idea of the UN and younger generation, the need of alignment in sustainable space exploration. With these points and recommendations, we come to the end of our presentation. We would like to thank a lot the representatives from the UK Space Agency, like Mr. Arfan, Ray, Daniel, and Eva, who gave us a lot from their time, patience, knowledge, through the last days, and also Zoe, who was here all the time for us, to support us, to help us, and listen to us and guide us. Thank you, everyone. We are open to the questions. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I think we can all agree that was a fantastic presentation, and we've had a few questions come in. So the first question that I have is actually, it comes off of the previous presentation. So they were asked a question to do with space sustainability and how would they involve global alignment and collaboration. And their response was to create international relations and standards to assure their application. So my question to you guys is, after you've heard and discussed with Arfan and with Ray and Dan, how easy do you actually think this is? Because I think a lot of the people watching don't understand the fact that the last week is basically been trying to solve a lot of issues. And I think it would be great if you could actually try and explain to everyone how hard you think this is.
This is very difficult. I think it feels like the issues we've been discussing are actual issues that we are all trying to figure out outside of this, you know, so taking the time to come up with solutions and then realizing that you've missed certain areas because, you know, international relations, it's not, you don't just consider one nation, you don't just consider one government or political standpoint. You have to consider what the people in that nation, how their enthusiasm for space is, because that then tells you, you know, what level that they're at in terms of, you know, do they need aid or do they need technological support, or do we think it would be really great to collaborate on our own like space exploration or something like that, you know? So there's like so many different factors going on behind the scenes that you miss, and then you realize, and then you find out, oh, there's another organization in place and things like that. So it's difficult to come up with a solid solution, but it's also really fun to figure out all of the different approaches that you can take.
Just to add on to what Nadia said, I think it's also what we realize is that it's so difficult getting everyone on the same page. As much as you all have similar goals and similar values, getting everyone to agree on some of the uniformity of the regulations would be such a hard thing. If you think about the establishment of the International Space Stations and how long it took for it to get there. And understanding everything that's happening now, and if you want to get everyone on board now, it wouldn't be as easy as just saying, yeah, everyone just needs to agree to this. It's not that easy, and I think that's what we were we didn't understand. Well, not that we didn't understand. We thought small of it, but it's actually such a big deal.
So I'd also like to thank the rest of the working group, because they're actually answering some of the questions in the chat function for you. So they've been going through and answering some of the questions. So the next question we actually have, I think relates a lot to what you were saying, Maria, with SGAC, and it was how non-spacefaring nations can engage in global space activities, but specifically, how can young professionals contribute, and what can an individual do? Where can they start?
Engaging with the SGAC can be possible for everyone who is motivated. And for example, I will give my personal example. I'm a dentist, basically. My background is dentistry. So, it may sound very weird. But I'm here. And okay, I hold also a parallel bachelor in political science, but it's also a bit far from space and engineering and what the idea that we have from astronomy, etc. So, but it needs just knowledge, efforts, and private sector. I think also, since it has usually maybe more easily funds from governments, etc., and private sector usually can help the government. I think the collaboration is super interesting, and private sector can give a lot. So for the government and for the funds for the project. So anyone in any way can help somehow and be part of the space sector in a way or another. It can be on an academic level, literature articles, or it can be in the practical way, for example, as an engineer make a space satellite. I don't know, but anyway, you can have your role. Anyhow, you create your role. You just have to decide to do it, and there are a lot of opportunities both in private and public sector, and it's super interesting. And the two sectors need each other. One cannot do it alone.
If I also may, I mean, regarding the part mostly related to SJC, I think that SJC offers different opportunity of growth to people also coming from developing spacefaring nations. How through, I mean, the different like development opportunities, and this, I mean, the SJC can act as a platform also to support the young professionals, so the students coming from the sectors, to acquire the right knowledge to come back to their own countries and bring that knowledge to them. And this might help in creating, for instance, a certain kind of dialogue or even interactions between, I don't know, in particular, probably academia and governments. This might be the first level, and then you can ramp up to another level, which might be academia, governments, and maybe you can also have international organization joining to try and stimulate also more and more the growth of a sector in this, let's say, newcomers in the space market, let's say, in the space market and in the domain. So SJC can really act in this sense as a platform, and we said it many times, and you can also hear it in many others SJC events as well, is that the young professionals and the students and all of us that we are here, we're all volunteers. And if we are here, is because we are really motivated in doing what we are doing, not just for ourselves to learn more, but also because what we are doing and what we are learning through these events or our other, let's say, opportunities offered by the organization is to then take everything, bring it home, and then try to use it in your own country and to help it development. And in this sense, SJC acts a bit as a multilateral organization. This is from my side.
Great. I think we've actually run out of time, and you had loads of questions. So if there's anyone from workshop 4 that's in the chat, feel free to answer any more of the questions that we didn't get a chance to answer on the stream. But I'd like to say thank you to Linda, Nadia, Maria, and Alessandra. I think you've done amazingly well, especially because these questions are not straightforward, because they are complex in the fact that there are multiple answers and you can disagree and you can argue, and ultimately there are so many problems and pitfalls. You've already mentioned politics, and you mentioned economics, and you mentioned the fact that there are even barriers you don't even know about. So you girls have done an amazing job at conveying just how complex this problem is. So thank you very much. Thank you again to the UK Space Agency, and I know that Arfan is around because he has been watching in. So thank you again to our sponsors, and we will now be going to our closing remarks with Laura and Pilar. So see you soon.